Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ben Barber. I'm the producer of this show, and I could not be more thrilled to be bringing you this podcast with such an esteemed man, Barry Weinhold. Let me just give you a little bit of information about him. He was a high school teacher and a school counselor. He has a PhD in counseling and psychology from the University of Minnesota. He's the professor emeritus and founder and former program chair of the Counseling and Human Services MA program at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. He is the co-founder of the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership, which is a 501c3 educational nonprofit organization. And Circle is also the sponsor of this podcast, and you can get all sorts of more information about that if you just if you follow the information there or in the show notes. He was the founder and director of the Kindness Campaign, a community-based violence prevention program in Colorado Springs and 12 other U.S. cities. He's the founder and director of the Kind and Safe Schools Initiative, and nationally acclaimed school-based violence prevention program that has been used by 700 plus United States schools. He was the co-founder and trainer of the First Visitor Program, a program serving new parents in the Pikes Peak region of Colorado. This is a home visitation program, and it's designed to prevent child abuse and neglect. He was a United Nations consultant for the UN's International Year of the Family, located in the UN Center in Vienna, Austria. He was the founding co-director of the Bratislavia International. I'm going to have to actually ask him how to even pronounce that. Family Studies in Slovakia. He's a licensed psychologist in Colorado since 1976, and he is the author or co-author of 78 books and 100 articles on various topics in psychology. And his latest book, Get Real, the same as the name of the podcast, Get Real, The Hazards of Living Out of Your False Self, provides the context for this podcast. It is available in ebook and paperback formats from Amazon, and you should have a copy. So please check that out. But right now, I'd like to introduce him. One last thing that I'd like to mention, he is also currently offering his services through BetterHelp and helping a whole new generation of people with their mental health and wellness, and just a wonderful friend for the last year, Dr. Barry Weinhold. Barry, how are you?
Thank you. I'm feeling grateful, and lots of good things are happening, including this podcast. And I guess the other thing that's on top of my list right now, Ben, is spring is here for the moment. Although it's liable to snow tonight, but I have a fishing trip scheduled for the end of the week. I'm an avid fly fisherman, and I've been waiting all winter to have a time to get away and get out at my favorite fishing spot, which is a mountain lake about 2.5 hours from here. So I'm going up there Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Is the name of the lake Mountain Lake?
No, it's called Wright's Lake.
Okay. I was going to say, it's not very original, Colorado.
No, I shouldn't even mention it on the air because I try to keep it a secret so not too many people know about it.
All right. I'll tell Dave, we'll beep out the name of the...
It's all right to leave it there. I mean, people from other parts of the country who watch this podcast probably don't even care.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast. Let's use this first episode as sort of an introduction.
Right.
What does it mean to get real and live an authentic life? How are you going to help people do that?
Well, actually, in my book, I kind of outline a lot of this, but I'm going to talk more about what's beyond what's in the book. But actually, I think it's probably living out of your false self is probably the most dangerous and prevailing problem in our society today, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's really the greatest threat to our democracy, because if you don't have people who can live out of their true self, out of their authentic self, then you have people who just simply go along with whatever some demagogue or some other politician or some other leader tells them what to think and do. And that's been one of the biggest problems I've seen right now with all the polarization we're having, and everybody sort of not even in trouble. One of the problems is that people can't even tell the difference between what is real and what is fake anymore. And so that's why I think it's a really important issue to deal with in a podcast. Also, I think it's probably the greatest cause of human suffering in all of our history. I mean, if
Mm.
I've done research on going way back, and most of the actually the going back to the first point, the the greatest cause of the fall of democracies hasn't been some kind of autocratic leader. It's been the fact that the masses are living out of inauthentic lives, and they just follow whatever the autocratic leader tells them to do, and that's what's brought down democracy. And then, in addition to that, I see that living out of a false self creates a lot of what I call false symptoms, which are anxiety, depression. Uh, uh, all addictions come from this, as far as I'm concerned. I'll explain why as we go along. When I think I'll even have a separate episode just on addictions itself, because that's such a very important process. And then I think also a lot of physical problems come out of living out of a false self. And I had a client the other day who said, "Boy, I have this awful pain in the neck." And he kind of gone like this. And I'm saying, "Well, who in your life is a pain in the neck?" He said, "Oh my God, my wife and my mother." I said, "Well, there you go. If you start resolving your conflicts with your wife and your mother, your pain in the neck will go away." So anyway, I also want to be able to share a lot of the information and tools that I've found has really helped people to shed their false self. And I think this podcast could be an adjunct to anyone who is in therapy already, and give them a little bit broader concept of what they're dealing with. And then also could even be a form of self-therapy for some people who are therapy averse for now, maybe. And so they watch podcasts instead of going to therapy. And they might pick up some things here that will help them in terms of whatever issues they're dealing with. So then I'm hoping to be able to cover a number of topics. I believe that the false self shows up in individuals, shows up in couples, shows up in families, it shows up at work, it shows up in places in the community, it shows up in, well, particularly in politics right now. I see a lot of false self going on. And then it actually, as far as the whole nation is concerned, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's one of the most difficult and pervasive problems that we have to look at is, why do people tend to believe things that are not even true? And they have very strong beliefs about these things. So I'm hoping to be able to share a lot of tools that will help people sort this out, and help them shed any kind of remnants of the false self that they might have, because it's a really and the tragedy is that most people don't know that they're living out of a false self. They don't know there's anything else, and that's the real problem. And that's what I think our real challenge is on this podcast, is to help people see there's something better. There's something better to life than suffering or having these terrible symptoms or addictions or whatever goes on that is dragging people down. And I even have researched the idea that one of the most addictive substances to the human body is our own adrenaline. And when you start having a lot of anxiety and you're running a fast-paced life, you're going to be secreting adrenaline, and it's easy to get addicted to that. And I'll be talking. Actually, I think I'll do a whole episode on addictions and addiction to adrenaline, because I think it's pervasive. I mean, in every one of my clients, I have an inventory, which I'll share when I do the episode on addictions, that helps them see whether they do have any addiction to adrenaline. And it's an eye opener for many people who think, "Oh, I don't have any of that." And then they take the inventory and think, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that I am doing so many things that are causing an addiction to adrenaline. And why is it, uh, Ben, that we have so many people now who are buying 5-hour energy? You know, I mean, it's a popular topic, a popular product right now, because by the middle of the day they're worn out,
Yeah.
and they need something to boost them to get through the rest of the day. And that's one of the early signs of adrenal fatigue, where you just are using up your adrenalines. I have a massage therapist. I don't think she'd mind me sharing this, but she was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue at 20.
Wow.
And that was the earliest I'd ever heard anyone being done. It's in the medical jargon. It's called Addison's disease, if you want to look it up. But it basically is adrenal fatigue, and it's related to chronic fatigue syndrome. It's related to fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, any of these others that have other kind of symptoms. But the main symptom is that they are using up their adrenaline far faster than they should. And in talking with my massage therapist one day, I said, "Did you ever have any trauma in your background?" And she looked at me once, just sort of like she was thinking for a minute. She said, "Oh, yeah, I did when I was 4 years old." And she described the trauma, and it was horrendous. And I said, "Did you ever resolve that trauma?" And she said, "Well, no, I never did." I said, "Well, that could be the cause of," she had a panic attack and had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I said, "That could be the cause of your panic attack." And she said, "I never thought of that." And she went on and researched it. And she now has done things to totally heal that trauma. And this was just a casual conversation before I got a massage one day. And so people just don't understand. And that's what I'm trying to help people understand, is that I have like a 3-step process that I take people through when I work with them. And I'll talk about this a lot during the podcast. And it's like, okay, what kind of symptoms are you having? What kind of disruptions in your life? Are you anxious a lot? Are you drinking too much? Are you eating too much? Whatever it might be. And then I'm saying, well, okay, where did that start? Let's see if we can find uh, the cause of that, the original cause of that. And then once I've helped them do that, and sometimes it's much easier than you think. I had this one client who was so inhibited that when he got in social situations, he couldn't speak. He would actually lose his voice, and he would avoid every social situation he could. And I said, "Now close your eyes and tell me how you're feeling right now." And he said, "Oh, I feel helpless." And I said, "Now close your eyes again and tell me when you first felt helpless in your life." He closed his eyes. He said, "Oh my God, I was 3 years old and my parents were fighting and I was helpless." And I said, "There's the cause of all your social anxiety." And so since then, now that he knows what it's about, and he's been working very hard to create his own social situations that he can go into and practice his social skills that he never practiced growing up, because he lived for like almost 27 years. He's 30, 31 or something like that, just avoiding social situations. So he never developed the skills. So anyway, then the third step in the process is, once you get a connection of where this came from, then we look at what's unfinished about it. Why is it still showing up in your life? Because the natural learning style of human beings is to repeat anything that was unfinished. It just simply sticks in our consciousness as something that's not totally, put together and integrated. And so anytime some situation reminds us in any kind of even remote way of the original situation where we left something unfinished, it will show up again. And so then I say, okay, let's look at what's unfinished about what happened to you and see what can be done right now to finish it. And with that framework, people are making huge gains in the work I'm doing with people. And it's basically, all I'm talking about here is the natural learning style of all human beings, is to anything that didn't get finished will get repeated in your life as many times as it needs to. So every time you have a symptom, it's your body saying, hey, pay attention to this. Wake up. There's something unfinished about this that you gotta take care of. And and so most of my work with people is not to fix them. In fact, every time I see a client, I say, and I'll say to everybody here in the audience, there's nothing wrong with you. There basically is nothing wrong with you, except that you made probably some wrong choices about what to deal with these wake-up calls that you got from your body that you would call symptoms. And once you understand what to do with them, you have all the power to change them and eliminate them. Because once something is finished, it's gone, and you don't have to worry about it again. I often use the metaphor with my clients is that there's some mythical place called central casting, and central casting has an unlimited supply of actors to send into your life to help you learn the lessons you didn't learn earlier. Whatever you left unfinished, you're going to find somebody show up in your life that's going to help you try to finish that. Now, they may not look like allies or friends at the moment, but that's what their purpose is. If you have an interaction with somebody and suddenly you have a overreaction, and I tell people there's a very easy way to tell when when you're really dealing with something unfinished, because you have a reaction, you have a situation that calls for this kind of reaction, and your reaction is this. That tells you immediately there's something from the past bleeding through that's causing this reaction to happen. And once you understand that, then you can ask yourself the question, where did this come from, and what's unfinished about it? So that, in a nutshell, is what I want to cover in the
Yeah, yeah, that in a nutshell. Barry, I've already learned so much in the last 15 minutes of listening to you talk about this topic. I'm so excited that we're going to be doing this every week.
Yeah, yeah, and every week I'll have a different topic that I'll focus on. And I'm basically also wanting to give our audience some actual practical tools that they could use, and we'll put them up on the screen, and people will be able to download them free to use. And I call them self-assessment tools.
Yep.
So whatever topic I'm talking about, that'll enable you to personalize it. How does this relate to me? Is this something I need to pay attention to? And so if you're not sure, some of them are in the form of self quizzes or writing exercises or whatever, but they're all designed to help you become more aware of two things: what hazards you're dealing with living out of your false self, and then also what kind of things you can do to correct that and to live more authentic lives. And the other thing that is important, I think, Ben, is that actually living an authentic life is our birthright. Everybody is born with that need. The two needs, the basic needs that people are born with, one of them is bonding and attachment. And if we don't get enough of that, or if we don't get any of that, or hardly any, we die. It's absolutely a life-saving need, and that need has to be filled. Now, unfortunately, in this country in particular, I haven't done research that would cover others as well, but other cultures, although in my work with BetterHelp, I work with clients from all over the world, and I find this to be true in many cultures, is that in this country particularly, I can quote statistics, about half of the infants that are born in this country go through infancy without developing a secure bonding and attachment to their mother. They develop an insecure attachment. And that then forms a foundation for everything that happens in the rest of their life. The research on this is so clear that whatever happens in that first 9 months is going to determine how the rest of your life goes. And so it is absolutely essential that people understand what their attachment style is based on whether they had a secure attachment or an insecure. And there are three types of insecure attachments. There's a avoidant, there's an anxious and ambivalent type of style, and then there's the disorganized type of attachment of insecure. And so I help people if they tell me that maybe they had a mother who was addicted to drugs or had depression or whatever it might be. It's likely then that she was not able to, as much as she might have tried, was not there consistently enough to help develop a secure attachment. So that's how I work. And then the second need is the need for authenticity. And everyone is born with that need. And hardly ever, my statistics are about 50% of the infants don't get the secure attachment. Well, my statistics on how many people don't get that authentic self developed, or at least foundation for it, by about age 3, I think only about 5% of adults have a fully functioning authentic self.
Well, hopefully by the time we get done with this podcast, that number is going to go up.
That's my goal.
That's the goal, right?
Right.
So next episode, we're going to be learning a little bit more about you personally, which I'm looking forward to because, you and I have known each other for about a year now. And I'm excited. I read off a bunch of accomplishments of yours at the beginning of this show, and I can't wait to talk more about that next episode and get into some of these deep dive topics of everything that you just talked about. If anybody is looking for more information on this, there's a scroll at the bottom. The podcast is brought to you by the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership, which of course was founded by Dr. Weinhold. And you can click the link in the show notes to get all of that information and a bunch of that whole page on the website. You can find all of that stuff, and you can find lists there in the future for these self-assessments and other things that we are talking about in this podcast. Barry, it's always a pleasure. Is there anything that you want to say to end the first episode?
Well, I just want to thank you, Ben, for helping me put this together, and I'm looking forward to many episodes, and hopefully we'll get some feedback from our audience, and there ought to be a place where people can ask questions or make comments, and that way we can really find out what is really reaching people and what questions people have about that. And any questions that you send in, I'll do my best to respond to them on the air.
I love it. Thank you. That is fantastic. Please, everyone, take him up on that offer, because he has a wealth of knowledge. As I said in the intro, author of 78 books, author or co-author of 78 books. Just fantastic. Dr. Barry Weinhold, thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next week on Get Real: How to Live an Authentic Life.
Well, thank you, Ben. See you then.
Thank you. For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.